Hello and welcome to the Pink Pineapple Podcast, where we peel back femtech and take a bite out of more than just the juicy bits.
I'm Claudia, and I'm Emma's partner in Pineapple for this adventure.
And I'm Emma. Together, we're exploring women's health across the full timeline, from first periods to menopause and everything in between.
Each week, we'll dive into the stories, science, and software shaping the future of women's health. From hormones to hardware, fertility to femtech founders.
Think of us as your slightly nosy best friends who just happen to be doctors with a healthy curiosity for innovation.
We'll be chatting to clinicians, creators, and changemakers. And yes, asking the questions you actually want answered.
So whether you're out for a walk, cooking dinner, or hiding from your to-do list, join us as we get curious, clinical, and occasionally controversial.
This is the Pink Pineapple Podcast,
where women's health meets what's next. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pink Pineapple Podcast. And today we are very excited to have with us Mari-Carmen. She is the founder of Matresa. She is a previous nurse and she is also a mum of 3. So welcome to the podcast, Mari-Carmen.
Thank you ever so much for having me, girls.
Claudia, who have you got with you this week?
Very proud of myself for this one. This is it's a little bit blurry. Postnatal performance pineapple. Let me explain, because you might, I don't know, I think you will agree with me that there really is an element of postnatal performance when it comes to having had a baby. You have to look like you're a good mom. You have to look like everything's fine. You have to go back to work and it's all okay. So I really feel that there is a big postnatal performance element. So hence today's pineapple.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's quite a philosophical pineapple for you this week, Claudia.
Yes.
But I'm sure that we will unwrap some of those kind of topics that you have mentioned there with Mari-Carmen. So it'd be really helpful, Mari-Carmen. We've just kind of had a brief mention about your background there in the intro, but if you could tell us a little bit more about you and then what has led you into building Matresa.
Yeah, of course. So I started my career as a paediatric intensive care nurse. So I worked at the Children's Hospital in Birmingham, looking after very poorly children, and I loved my job. And went on to maternity leave with my first child, and he is now 9, believe it or not, and I've got 2 others. And it was when I was on maternity leave going through my own experience postnatally that I found such a lack of support with my own health and fitness, actually. Getting back to previous health, I did a lot in the gym and I couldn't really get the answers that I wanted when I had Arthur. So I set up my first business, which was in health and fitness, supporting mums with their pelvic health, postnatal, diastases, all that kind of stuff. And then that's kind of led me to where I am now. So, through that business, really recognised a gap in the market for comprehensive platform support for mothers right from pregnancy to the first 2 years.
And obviously we're going to speak a lot more in depth about Matresa and
Yes,
your vision for Matresa. It'd be really helpful. I think we're increasingly seeing this term matrescence that is being used now, but it'd be helpful for you to explain to our listeners maybe what that means and also why does it matter? Why are we starting to use that term more?
yeah. So the term has been around a long time, and there's a great book on matrescence, which is where Matresa, the name, comes from. And matrescence refers to the physiological, psychological, emotional changes a woman goes through when she has a child. And it's doesn't just happen, it evolves. Every stage, whether you've got a toddler, a child going to school, a newborn, it's constantly evolving. And there's actually evidence to show that there is some changes that happen in the brain. So just like adolescence, having a child, there are those changes. So it's so many moms. I mean, I think have you got children as well, Emma? Forgive me, or I know you have, Claudia.
I definitely do. And
Yes.
I have got a toddler as well at the moment, so can definitely appreciate
Yeah.
that I'm evolving through that stage at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I just remember when I had my first thinking, I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to feel like that. And actually, every mother goes through it. And I think it's actually recognizing that, just like you do when an adolescence goes through the teenage years. It's really important that we all recognize those changes so we can offer the right support. But also when mothers returning back to work, they don't return back the same, and not just because they've got a child, but actually they have changed. That's where it's come from that word matrescence.
And I think just kind of speaking a bit more about that change and that transition. What do you feel that's missing there at the moment, Mari-Carmen?
Yeah, I think there's a lack of understanding. Not many people have even heard of that name. Like when I speak to mums, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know that even existed." So I think there's a lack of understanding around what matrescence is, not just through mothers, but also within the workplace as well. It's actually driving. I think there's a piece around awareness, but it's all well and good as driving all this awareness around this word. But there actually has to be action that follows that. What are the things that we're going to change, in regards to maternal infrastructure, which is what I'm on a mission to do, is to actually make sure there is a change and there's actions so we can support mothers through that period.
So that brings us really nicely onto Matresa. So what is it that you are doing with Matresa and hoping to achieve with it?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of research. We've worked with Warwick University. We've done quite a lot of feasibility studies. I speak to mums all the time in my previous business as well. So we found a gap in when we talk about maternity. Like this is it's in the news all the time now. It's every single day I'm hearing some trauma around some mothers' experience, which is devastating. But it's not just one area. It's a huge systemic problem. You've got, if you can't just fix it in isolation within the healthcare, you've also got to look at, right, well, what's going on with that mother personally. What's her, like, what's her support network at home? Where is she at work? There needs to be change and understanding across all those different areas. So we are building that infrastructure. So we are creating a platform that has everything a mother needs, but in one place, but it's connecting the dots between workplace and healthcare. And it will be clinical grade, so it will be software as a medical device, and looking at particularly postnatal depression in the first instance. Trying to identifying if a mother is likely to go down a certain trajectory before that issue happens, because we know ourselves, it's never just, oh, I don't just arrive with these feelings, or there is obviously a series of events and circumstances that have led to that point. So if we can understand that through data that we're collecting, also speaking to mothers, we can make sure that their mother gets the support that she needs, whether it's from healthcare or whether it's actually within the workplace.
So is it identifying quite early on then, Mari-Carmen, the risk factors and the lack of structure for those women, and then trying to mitigate that by putting more of a structure in place for them to reduce the risk of them going further down that track?
Yeah, so it's capturing these mothers as soon as they enter the market, as crude as it sounds, as soon as they are pregnant, whether it's positive or negative, or they're going through, they've had fertility journey, it's capturing their mums right at that point and following him through that journey, looking at what pre-existing medical conditions they've got, where are they working, what's their support network like at home, because unfortunately we all know there's no one size fits all. There's so many different types of mothers, whether you are a single mother, whether you are, whether you work, whether you don't work, and it's following them throughout that journey and making sure that there's that level of personalization for that, but also preventative support. Because a lot of the time, I know when I look at my own journey, there's many a times where I'm like, well, if somebody had told me that, then I wouldn't have necessarily done that. Do you know what I mean? There's so much information, which is great, but I think that's also the problem. I think their moms are like, well, then what do I trust? If so-and-so says that, why, it's just such a conflicting area as well.
I think that occupation aspect is really interesting. And I would be really interested to know, kind of from some of the data that's coming out as well from what you'll be doing, is that in itself just a risk factor? The type of people that are maybe working in certain environments or drawn to certain occupations, is that in itself a potential risk factor? And is that something that can be flagged?
Yeah, so we did a pilot actually with one of the big four last year, and that was within professional services. And we took a cohort of mothers through a program that we've built, and we had brilliant results. But the key thing from that is that we had mothers that were on maternity leave, mothers that were returning back to work, but mothers who were actually back at work. And they're all like director partner level. So they've got, very big jobs. And that's where we see this problem in terms of retention, attrition in the workplace related to females, particularly in these sectors, because they are, they've got big jobs, but they're also having to juggle, the responsibilities of being a mother as well. Not only, those physical responsibilities, but also navigating all those changes that that the body is going through. So yeah, that is those areas, and it's supporting. A lot of it again is educating the leaders in those companies, how they can support these females, but also equipping the mothers with those skills. Because a lot of the time, I think it's confidence as well, which again is no fault of the mother. It's the changes that they've gone through, but it's giving them the skills, the confidence, to be able to set the boundaries, ask the right questions, and get the support that they need.
And with the current system, Mari-Carmen, as it stands, where do you feel that we're letting down women when it comes to maternal mental health?
Yeah, well, wow, this was terrible, isn't it? I think there's so many different. That's such a, such a big question. I think the biggest problem I see when I put my nurse's hat on is there's so many different, it's so fragmented. Like you've got so many different systems, you've got it's such a postcode lottery, whether you even get, the same midwife throughout your pregnancy or postnatally, whether you get the check. I think fragmentation is a massive issue. The fact that there's not just one system. I think if there was just one maternity record system that everybody used, I think that would save a lot of time. But also, I don't think so many women just fall through the cracks because they just get lost in the system. I think there's that one area. I think pregnancy provisions are better. Postnatally, it's even worse. So we spoke to a lot of mothers with a study that we did around pre and postnatal, what their experiences were. And a common theme is around the 6 to 8 week check. So we know that postnatal depression can show up to 2 years afterwards. And I think a 6 to 8 week check, it's done now more routinely around 8 weeks with the baby's vaccinations, which again, that shouldn't be happening. It should just be a separate appointment. And that's what NICE recommend, that has a separate appointment. It's not happening. And I think that's such a crucial appointment for the mother, but also for healthcare, but also for companies to actually sit down with the mother and really understand, okay, well, what's going on? Where do you need the support? But then a follow up after that. A lot of the time mums go to the check, they're like, well, I've been signed off now, let's crack on. But actually, they're still only 8 weeks postpartum. And that, I remember that's when the baby's still new, people are still coming around, checking in and you're okay. But then 4 months down the line, 6 months down the line, when you're thinking about going back to work and you've got to juggle all those things, I think that's when mothers really need the support. So it's giving them that support, not just for the first 6 to 8 weeks. It should be for at least the first 2 years.
Do you think a big part of this is lack of access or lack of understanding or a combination of both?
I think it's a both. I think it's access education, I think, as well. So I do a lot on TikTok. And when I talk about the 6 to 8 week check, honestly, the amount of comments I get from mums saying, well, I didn't even know I could even ask that at the check. It's equipping the mothers with the knowledge so they can actually self-advocate for themselves at the appointment. And unfortunately, because I was a nurse, I know what questions to ask when I go to any kind of hospital appointment, but that shouldn't be that shouldn't be a weakness. We should all have the right access. We should all have the access to the same level of care, and it shouldn't just be because I know what questions to ask. So I think there's an education piece there, and also antenatally, you used to get a lot of, antenatal courses offered through the NHS. It's now only an hour, and it's normally just a visit into the hospital to see the labour ward. Not everyone can afford NCT, and even NCT is great, but actually it doesn't cover all areas, in terms of around what can go wrong. I think I spoke to a doctor the other week, and he said one of the biggest things is when he was an obstetrician, and he had a mother that came in and ended up with an adverse event. The baby was fine, she was fine, but they had to take the mother in for an emergency C-section. And obviously the clinician's role in that situation is to keep everybody safe. So, there wasn't time to sit by the bedside and go through all of the risks, why they were doing it. It was just like, we're doing this, crack on. And I understand that. But actually the mother, she didn't understand what can go wrong. I think a lot of the time it's, well, this is what, it's all a bit perfect perhaps. And also access, again, like postnatally, like in Scotland, no one gets a 6 to 8 week check. They don't offer it anymore. And some GPs do, some GPs don't. A mum said to me the other day, she was over the phone. I got mine face to face. So again, it's not the same standard, which it should be.
Yeah, I loved my NCT class because I met a lot of people in the local area. And that was great because we go and we push our buggies together, we
Yeah.
go get coffees together, we're all delivering around the same time and sharing stories. And that was lovely. But as the token doctor there, in that group, it was such an interesting perspective because I remember, I'll never forget, there was this one time where I was asked to lie down on the floor. And then I was told, this is what a cesarean section is like if it happens to you. And I was lying down on the floor. And then they said, look how many people will be around you. There will be an anesthetist. And then someone was standing above me. One of the other people would come, one of the other NCT and stand there. Then this is the anesthetist's assistant. And this is the obstetrician and gynecologist. And this is the ST3. And this is whatever. And then I was standing there on the floor. It's like I was in a coffin underground, surrounded by all these people staring down at me. And it was bloody terrifying, And so, yeah, I took that away with me as maybe we don't present that side of things properly, I would say, in NCT.
Yeah, because I did NCT in my first, and it was the reason why I did it was because I wanted to meet friends, and I do think that is mostly why women maybe go to NCTs to meet friends, but also because they want to do the antenatal course, and NCT do a great job. But I just still think there is still a bit of piece missing around, just giving the mother that information of like what could go wrong. Obviously, you don't want to make it. It's a very exciting time. I think there's a fine balance there, but I do think we do have to make sure that the mother knows exactly all the different areas, and what routes could potentially happen. Because I certainly,
Yeah.
I was put to sleep with my first child. I had an emergency C-section and had a general anaesthetic, and that was just horrendous. I didn't even think that was a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
I think, and I was saying this on another podcast that I'd been invited on a couple of weeks ago. It's a very different experience consenting somebody or informing somebody about something in an antenatal clinic environment where you've got more time, you can give them some leaflets, you can show them all these things, than it is doing an emergency procedure at 2 o'clock in the morning where that person is having stickers put all over their chest. Somebody's trying to wheel them out the room. You're kind of frantically writing things down in front of them. It's a completely different experience. And that person is probably, full of adrenaline. They might have had some kind of medication where they're kind of feeling maybe not quite themselves, or, it's a very, very different experience. And I agree with you, Mari-Carmen. I think that the education, antenatal education needs to be better. And I think we need to inform women. It's not about scaremongering. It's about making sure that women have a level of information that I suppose they can build on if things need to progress, but they've got that level of information. And obviously we don't want to medicalize a birth if we don't need
No.
to. We want birth to be as natural as possible, and we want to follow a woman's birth plan as much as we can. But
Yeah,
sometimes there's a curveball that's thrown in there, and it's basically about keeping mum and baby safe, and that's the main kind
absolutely.
of outcome that we want to achieve. And yeah, with regards to that piece as well that you say about kind of, it used to be that the NHS used to have quite a comprehensive antenatal program. I think there's a complete postcode lottery, as you say, with that, and unfortunately, I think COVID for some units kind of threw a bit of a spanner in the works, and those walkarounds, which were nice for women just to see what does this environment look like. Because some women, until they have their babies, will have never been in hospital ever before.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Since they maybe came out of there themselves. So yeah, so I think, unfortunately, I think the frequency of that happening, I think because of the restrictions of COVID, some of those programs haven't restarted again as well. So I think it's a very tricky environment sometimes for pregnant women to navigate at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah,
It's
I think,
about appropriate expectation setting, isn't it? Which I
yeah.
know is
And
easier said than done, right?
And also, I think when you are giving the information, it's pitching it at the right level. Because I think, I mean, not every mother, we've all got different, some may understand medical terminology. And I think sometimes the information they're given, they don't even understand, you need to be able to pitch it, like you've said, Emma, start with like the very basics. Okay, well, if you then want to understand a little bit more around that, right, then you can then go and read a little bit more about that. But it's pitching it at the right level as well for all mothers, because not, everyone comes from different backgrounds. So yeah, I think it's definitely around education and more so the midwives, they don't have time to do that, when they're seeing them, when they've got their antenatal visits. But also ask the mums, if the mums know what questions to ask during those visits, they can almost go and find that information themselves as well. Obviously, it should be given to them, but if they know what questions to ask, I think that would also help.
There's a great potential for tech to assist here. So with Matresa, will you be doing a part of this education
Yes.
for women? Because as you said, they come in at the point at where they are pregnant. So then will there be education as part of that?
Yeah. So we'll be following mother and baby all around that dyadic care. Because again, I think when you're pregnant, they're treated as one, what's going on with the mother, what's going on with the baby. But again, a lot of competitors are very focused on what's going on with the baby's development. Okay, well then what does that mean for the mother? We need to they link together, and then following that through postnatally as well. Because if you've got a baby that has got severe reflux, isn't sleeping, and so then the mom isn't sleeping, well, that's going to have a huge effect on, their health and well-being. So it's giving them that information. And there's always has to be an action at the end of it, I think, and not just content. I think it has to be personalized. And I think that's what I'm seeing. It was really, without obviously, because we haven't launched yet, but without saying too much, it's so important that Matresa is not just a content library, because I think otherwise, again, it's just there's so many of them out there. That's what I'm trying to say. I think but it also has to be really personalized rather than just going, right, here you go, one size fits all. And that's where tech can come in, because we can collect that data, really get to know the mother, what's going on with her biometrics, what's going on, what's her previous medical history, and just making sure that her care plan is personalized to what she needs at that time.
And how do people get in then to use Matresa? Is it through the workplace?
Yeah, so we will be doing B2B2C. So we haven't launched yet, and we're launching this summer. So it will be available to download from the App Store, direct to consumer. But the end game here is actually working with corporates to support their returning mothers, because we know that is a huge problem that needs more support with. So we would do that. But my goal is to get this into the NHS, so every mother has access to this. As soon as they go to that booking appointment with their midwife, they use it. And we actually have got some pilots lined up with a few trusts, which is very exciting, because I think that's where you then get that equitable maternal healthcare, because not every mother can afford to go to all of these luxury classes or, go to NCT. So it's really important to me that this is also available through the NHS. But you'll know, both of you, that is not an easy journey. And unfortunately, there are lots of red tapes, hoops that you have to jump through to get to that point.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up as well. I know you said about being a software as a medical device as well, Mari-Carmen. Kind of on that side of things, how do you make sure that what you're developing is safe and it's credible and it meets all of those regulatory standards?
Yeah, so within the team, we have clinical safety officers and research partnerships with Warwick University. And we're also working with another organisation, but I can't share that just yet, to make sure that all the information on the platform is evidence-based. But also we're not building a language model here, because I think that's extremely dangerous as well. And I think there's only actually one language model in the UK that's actually been certified as a class 2A anyway. And I think the problem is this. I saw an app the other day, mentioning no names, that had a chatbot on it. And it's advertised as a health and wellbeing platform. But I think if you have that on there, you've got to be very careful, because if the mother then asks a question, I don't know, why is my baby blue? And the platform doesn't respond in the right way. Do you know what I mean? So I think for us, it's more about we're using AI more as like a data model, more around like looking at behaviors and algorithms, as opposed to actually creating its whole new language model. Because I think then, well, I mean, there's only one that's ever done it in the UK. And I think it's so early as well with LLMs in healthcare. I think it's only going to get stricter. The more that start popping up, I think that we're going to start looking at these in a bit more detail. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's a common discussion that comes up on here, isn't it, Claudia, with the wellness versus medical device, and it's something that we also think that the regulations are probably going to toughen up a little bit around that over time. I suppose another thing I was wondering is, when it comes to, pregnancy and it comes to the postnatal period, there's impacts on, I suppose, partners or, the wider family, that wider support network. Does that fit into Matresa at all? Is that something that's factored in?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's actually a question that we get asked when we're pitching to companies. What about the partners and what about the males in the company? And they absolutely have a place here. So what we will be doing is offering this to mothers, but if they want to share it with their partner, they can. So there'll be features within there where they can actually bring their partners in and share information with them, but obviously with their consent, because I think there's also, we have to be very careful with that. But with companies, if they've got males going on maternity leave, which is happening a lot now, which is great, they will also be given the platform, which they can then give with their partner to use.
Fantastic. And I suppose you've just mentioned about pitching there as well, Mari-Carmen. So you've recently raised some funding, which is fantastic. So we have quite a number of founders that listen as well to the podcast. So it'd be great if you could tell us a little bit more about that aspect of Matresa.
Yeah, well, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Obviously, I'm not, I'm a nurse by background. I've got another business, but it's a consumer-faced business. It's not a huge, I've never had to pitch to investors before. And I think one tip that I would say is, I remember going to pitch to my first investor, and I remember saying to my husband, "Oh yeah, I think I'm just going to get this." So naive. And if I look at my deck now, I'm like, oh my God, like this was like, I wasn't even ready. I think there's a piece before where I think it takes you at least 6 months to get investment ready. And I don't just mean making sure that you've got all your legals in place. I mean, actually, there's a frame of mind, there's a mindset. It's a journey of growth before you can actually go and have those conversations. Because now when I pitching to investors, I can just tell like the energy is different. Like they're almost coming. It's more they're coming to me. The conversation. You know what I mean? There's more. It just takes time, and I think if you are looking for investment, be prepared that it does take a long time. I do think there is a lot of what's the word, bureaucracy around it, in sense that it's who you also know. Like I do think that is a big deal. Like if you've worked at certain companies or you are in those industries, and you're surrounded by investment bankers, and that's not taken away from them, these people raising the money, but it is harder if you're not in those networks. So it's immersing yourself in those networks, which is a massive thing in itself. Like it's a really, you've got to be able to build that confidence to be able to go into those rooms. I mean, to start with, I hated doing that. You've also got to kiss a lot of frogs, because unfortunately there are a lot of horrible people out there. And you just got to back yourself and you've just got to keep going. And it's funny actually, because there was something that happened in my journey. I was meant to get my investment last February and it got taken away. Literally, I was meant to sign the term sheet and something happened and it all got taken away. And I went home and I cried. My husband was like, "Jesus, what are we going to do? This is horrendous." But actually, it all happened for a reason, because we all pivoted. And when I look at what I was doing before versus now, I'm like, I was just on the wrong track there. It just wasn't right. So I think there's a part of exploring the market, researching, listening to people, creating that story, and almost just trusting the process. Because I think everything at the time, it feels like everything's against you. But I know now it feels so much different, because I've done that learning piece, and it is such a journey of personal development. And get a therapist. I mean, I see a therapist twice a month, and she has helped build that muscle. Because I was like, if I want to be that founder, that CEO of this big maternal health company, there's so many demons, that I need to put to bed, that I need to do that to be able to kind of up level myself personally. So it's a huge journey, and it's hard.
Yeah. And how has being a nurse helped you? Do you think it's been helpful? Do you think it's been a hindrance?
I think it has helped me in terms of what I'm building, because obviously it's a health platform. So in terms of like industry knowledge, I mean, I know the market very well. Also, from like clinician and mother, that's helped. But in terms of business, I've never grew, a nurse. I've looked after very poorly children, but I've never gone out and raised investment before. So that's the muscle that I have had to create. And the people that I've got around the table now, I pinch myself. I'm like, shit, like, they're all backing me now because they can see, they believe in it. But you can't do it on your own as well. Like, entrepreneurship, company, it's getting it's finding those people as well that you can bring on that journey. Because I am a solo founder as well, and I have had that. They're like, oh, well, you need to go get yourself a co-founder. I'm like, well, I've kind of been on this journey for the last 3 years, maybe not with just Matresa, but my businesses have kind of led me to this point. If I went out and found a co-founder right now, I think it would actually be more of a danger, I think. But you've then got to think, if you are a solo founder, then who have you got around your table that can provide you with that extra, there's a governance piece there, but also just so they are on that journey with you, because it's very lonely.
I love it. It's a journey. Get a therapist. That's what I'm going to take away.
Absolutely. And if you want a good one, I can share you mine. Brilliant.
I think that's great that you've actually shared that, Mari-Carmen, because I think sometimes this founder's journey gets very glamorized and it seems trendy and it seems like, but actually it's hard work. There is, and it can be lonely. Yeah. And like you say, it's those massive highs and massive lows. And I think that's a real reality check for some people, probably what you've mentioned there.
And being a parent at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, yeah. It's hard. It's being able to deal with that up and down. It's having that resilience, which I think you have to build.
Yeah. And so big picture wise, where do you see Matresa in 5 years' time? What's been that driving force for you? What's that vision that's driven you through all those tricky times?
That every mother has their access to their maternity notes, their journey on their phone, and that it is available to every mother, whether they are in the UK, we would like to take this to US, if I had to really go for it, is that everyone knows that Matresa, it's a household name. Like, oh, did you do NCT? Or if you got the Matresa app, that's where, that every mother has their confidence of that in their phone. And it's almost like their co-pilot that can support them through that journey of motherhood.
It's like smart notes, isn't it? It's like, it's not just your medical notes, not just your maternity notes, but they are smart as well. They could highlight things to you. They can track things for you. So, yeah. Sounds super.
Fantastic. So if people want to follow your journey, Mari-Carmen, and they want to find out more about Matresa, where can they do so?
Yeah, so our website is Matresa Matresa-app.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Mari-Carmen Sanchez-Morris. I post a lot on there. I am on Instagram as well, but I post a lot on LinkedIn, and obviously we've got our website. So if you are interested, join our waitlist. If you are a HR Chief People Officer wanting to improve your provisions for mothers, then reach out. And if you're also an investor, then get in touch, because we are onto something. I can feel it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us today and telling us more about what you've been up to.
Thank you very much for having me.
Take care. Thanks for being here. We love having you with us on this journey through women's health and innovation.
Follow us on Instagram at the Pink Pineapple Podcast for clips, conversations, and the latest in women's health and femtech.
We'll see you next week. Same pineapple, new topic. Everything we talk about on the Pink Pineapple Podcast is here to inform and inspire, but it's not a substitute for professional medical advice. If you're worried about your health, please reach out to your GP or healthcare provider.